This week, I quoted $50,000 to a prospect to work one-on-one with me, and I held that amount in silence, waiting for a reaction, something I have never done before. I didn't fill the silence. And then, when there was a pushback, I immediately backpedaled, started discounting the offer, wanting to make it work. And that moment revealed to me something about my own internal operating system that I want to share with you in this video. Stay till the end, because what I'm sharing with you on how our internal operating system works, what prompts us to shrink ourselves in order to be acceptable, in order to be palatable for somebody else, and how to shift that is something you will absolutely want to know, hear, and learn and implement for yourself. Hi, my name is Ajita, and welcome to my YouTube channel. With over 20 years of corporate executive experience, I am now the spiritual advisor and consciousness architect for tech leaders, upgrading their internal leadership operating system for the AI age. What I share with you in this video is my live business building experience, taking my business to $4.4 million in 12 months or less. I'm already on week 15 of this journey. I'm not building this business from hustle and grind. Instead, I'm using the very principles that I teach and help my clients succeed, what I have now termed as the 7I pathway of creation, where the 7 I's are infinite field, intention, imagination, identity, intuition, inspired action, and inevitable results. This is my live case study of taking my business to $4.4 million using the 7I pathway creation and my own proprietary framework of EPIC leadership operating system, where EPIC stands for E for emotional operating system, P for physical operating system, I for intellectual operating system, and C for consciousness operating system. Combined across all of these different operating systems, you are able to walk the 7I pathway to create the reality of your leadership journey. Week by week, you will see invisible shifts creating visible results, and we are now on week 15. Let's see what has changed. So the first event I want to talk about is actually a very deep internal awareness that landed for me this week. I'm part of an inner circle journey with a beautiful set of amazing souls, and the mentor that I'm working with is so powerful in her ability to master the reality of creation. She actually has been talking about this aspect of directing the source energy field. And you know, in my 7I pathway of creation, the first thing we start with is the infinite field, which means everything is energy, and there's energy everywhere around us. We are energy, and everything around us is energy. So the way we create in our leadership journey is using that infinite field and directing it through our consciousness. Whenever she used to mention about we are directing our energy, source energy, and creating our reality, it never landed for me until this week. When it landed, I could feel the difference in my body. I woke up feeling euphoric, expansive, no reason, nothing had changed externally. The mere awareness that I am actually co-creating my reality in partnership with the infinite field, and the partnership actually intersects at the place of my consciousness operating system. Think about it. We have energy all around us. So what really brings something into material reality? It is the focused attention, which is where I talk about the 7I pathway, because you're taking the infinite field, you're moving it through with your intention, saying, this is what I want to create. Intention is the what. This is what I want to create from a very soul-aligned perspective. And then when you're using that energy to create with that intention, you're using your imagination as to what that creation would look like. And then you're going to club it with, who do I need to be in order to bring this creation into reality? And so there comes the identity. So the filter through which we are actually creating happens to be the identity that we hold, which is in our consciousness operating system. Consciousness is really the filter through which our reality gets created. So whatever change we want to make happen in our external reality has to pass through our consciousness operating system, which includes who we believe we are, our identity. The minute this landed for me, it was incredible. Emotionally, I was euphoric, excited, with no reason, because I just felt that this is the process of creation, and it has finally landed in my awareness so deeply that I now know when I'm creating something in my reality, I now know exactly the aspect my consciousness operating system has played, my identity, which is again tied to the identity then determines my emotions that I'm feeling, the thoughts that I'm having, the physical nervous system aspects, all of that is tied to my identity, right? So once I understood that correlation, I was like, wow, this is amazing, because I now get to create my reality by changing and altering my consciousness, the filter through which creation process unfolds. And physically, because of this awareness, I was highly embodied. active. I dressed up, like I did makeup every day and smiling, and my body was moving. I went to my dance lessons, again resumed my dance lessons this week, went back to pole dancing, went to learn some nice Bolly hip hop routine. And the intellectual reframing, the intellectual understanding, right? This clear understanding of how I get to co-create my reality, when it truly landed for me, it was just beautiful. And I think the bigger shift this week, along with this awareness, is that everything that I am doing in this world is an expression of my consciousness. And so the more higher my consciousness is in terms of joy, happiness, and the service that I want to be of in this world, the easier it becomes a process of expression, because I'm no longer dragging myself through the process. Instead, it becomes a byproduct of who I am. And so I think the consciousness always related shift for me with this is the awareness of the power of my consciousness operating system in the reality that I'm creating. And more than once this week, with this awareness, I was able to keep coming back and saying, okay, what would the identity of me with this version that is already accomplished this desired end state would feel like, would take action on, and so on, which was, I think, very, very powerful. And I used this very awareness to also come to a decision on the ad agency that I was going to go with, and so on. For me, I think the biggest takeaway in this particular understanding, which I definitely want you to pay attention to, is this: where is your attention being placed? Is your gaze, and I want to use the word gaze because that's what my mentor has been using, the gaze, where is your gaze fixed on? Where are you focused on? Where is your attention going? Is it on something that you don't have? Is it on your current reality where you're looking at what is missing? Or is your gaze fixed on what you're creating newly? Because if you're focused on what is missing in your current reality, your current circumstances, your current financial situation, your current relationship situation, your current health situation, you are just creating more of the same. So in order to create something new as a leader in this world, your gaze is required to be focused on what you wish to create. This is the difference between being in reactive consciousness, reacting consciousness, right? Which means you're doing the same thing again and again, reacting, to moving up to creative consciousness, which is where is your gaze focused on newly creating something, or in other words, bringing something into reality that is more aligned with your purpose, with your truth, with your joy. In terms of outer action, I think this particular awareness shifted so much for me that I naturally, intuitively reaching out to many people about my new program that I'm launching this coming week. I'm happy to say that 3 people have already confirmed, and one of them has already paid full. And I'm also scheduled to talk to, I think, 5 different people this week. So I'm excited about the possibility of, this is where I'm focusing on my creation. What am I creating in this world? So what's your takeaway, listener takeaway from this particular experience of mine? Where your gaze lands determines what you're creating, because source energy is non-judgmental. It is present. The infinite field is present everywhere around us. And it just follows the direction of our focus. If your focus is on looking at what is not there, you're creating more of that. If your focus is looking on what is there and what you're wishing to create, that's where the energy gets directed. The field is being directed by your consciousness. It is so important to understand how powerful a co-creator you are, I am, we all are. And so the key here is your consciousness architecture and awareness of where is that attention focused on. So I want to leave you with this. What would change in your life this very moment if you truly refused to let your gaze drop from what you're truly creating? Incident number 2, or event number 2, a sales conversation with a prospect that was completely unexpected in how it unfolded, but that's where all the gold lies, doesn't it? So I got on a call with someone who I've known for a while. Intuitively, I knew getting on that call that I was going to be working with this person. In fact, I was getting ready to even suggest to this person that it would be really beneficial for them to work with me to resolve these aspects that they have been thinking about and sharing with me over a period of time. And the beauty about this conversation was that even before I could broach that subject, the person themselves asked, saying, I would love to work with you on this if you have the time and have, space for me as a client, which was a beautiful intuitive validation for me, because I walked into that call already planning to make that suggestion. To hear that person make that first step towards even saying that means it was meant to be. That conversation was meant to be. And here's what happened. And everything unfolded beautifully until they probably assumed some level of pricing. The prospect said, just send me your terms and conditions. And I'm like, wait a second. In my head, I'm thinking, you haven't even asked me what it takes to work with me financially. So then I wanted to make sure that I didn't want to leave that call without having that conversation. So as I was going to broach the subject of what it takes to work with me financially, investment wise, I started feeling the fear show up in my body. Emotionally, I was sensing fear. My body also started responding to that fear with some tightness and heat. I was like hesitating. I was like, blah, blah, blah. Like words were not forming properly to make that sentence even come out of my mouth. Despite that, although that was happening emotionally and physically, there was tension. I said what it takes to work with me, and I quoted $50,000, and it actually took the person back by surprise. And as I was seeing him react, I was simply holding space, and I kept quiet. After I said the amount, typically I end up blabbering, which is what happened in the previous week with a prospect. Once I said the $50,000, even before I could give space for him to respond to it, I started saying, we can work together, I'll make it work, blah, blah, blah. This time, I said the amount and I kept my mouth shut to see what's the reaction. And the person responded saying, that is way over my budget. I'm not a tech CEO, and I'm not like looking to get my business to a certain level and make money, etc. So this is like a huge investment. So they were looking at it from a perspective of what's the ROI, monetary ROI for working with me. Now, in the meantime, when all this happened, my body was reacting. My emotions were, once I said the number, I felt a little bit more calmness, but I held the space, and then I watched myself starting to discount again. I started watering down. Here is what happened. I wanted to work with this person as they did want to work with me. So knowing that I can make this shift happen for this person, I started saying, let's make this work. Let's figure it out. Money should not be the reason, blah, blah, blah. All the shrinking that I could do, explaining that I could do, I did, while equally educating the other person as to why this is a priceless investment. It's a priceless transformation for them, let alone putting any money on it, right? So it was an awkward experience. And guess what? You don't learn much without such awkward experiences. So after the conversation is what happened was the biggest shift for me. I reflected on it and I realized that any of us, the reason we are not investing any money in any direction, whatever that may be, is because we don't see it as a priority or we don't see it as a valuable investment. And so when I reflected on this conversation, it became so clear for me. This is the intellectual operating system shift for me, is this. The person's inability to invest in my offering, whatever be that number, is not a reflection of my value. It is the value that I know I'm bringing to this world. In fact, this prompted me to do a whole exercise of sitting down and writing every single reason why $50,000 to work with me one-on-one is actually the biggest discounted transformation they'll ever have in their life. And I have evidence to prove that based on my client experiences. So I started clarifying it for my own self so that I stop having people mirror back what I haven't resolved within myself. So that is the consciousness operating system. The identity of someone who holds that level of prosperity is what I'm stepping into, which means I have to be rooted in the value of what I'm providing for my clients. And once I did that, it became very obvious to me that the work really is not on my end. Once I became aligned with that number, it's actually helping the client see why they are preventing themselves from that growth or transformation, because this person did not react because of lack of money. Plenty, they have plenty. It's publicly known they have plenty. But they've decided not to put that kind of money because of the value that they are associating for that transformation. That wasn't made clear to them for themselves. So long story short, for me, the biggest gold in this process is anchoring my offering in the value that I bring without a shadow of doubt, and truly being rooted in it, in that identity of that individual, that worthy individual that is fully valuing their service without needing to over-explain, without needing to discount. So what's the outer action? I have actually detached from the result. I'm no longer even desiring to having to work with this person, but I do know I will be going back to this person to clarify and have some other propositions of working together, not discounting this offering, but offering some alternatives, primarily with the objective to help them see why they are resisting the investment of this level in themselves. That is the only job I have. That is the best service I can do for this person without attachment to whether they decide to move forward to work with me or not. And that is also a big part of the journey in the learning process, which is non-attachment to the outcome. So what's your takeaway as a listener? Your body will always flinch before a breakthrough. Fear will show up. It is part of us growing, because if we are always in a fearless state, we are in comfort zone. Discomfort zone allows for us to move through our fear. So the nervous system is doing exactly what it's programmed to do, which is to keep us safe and not tread into the unknown. You will feel the fear. It is whether you let that fear dictate your decision. If you're an entrepreneur and if you have experienced or you're stuck in a place where you're not increasing your price, then I would have two suggestions for you. One, sit down and make it crystal clear for your own mind why the amount you're charging is actually a steal for the person that is investing in that offering or that product or service. And most importantly, the second thing is, where are you not holding that price when you quote it to the client, when you're declaring it to the world? And sit with that and understand what it takes for you to hold that price without diluting it, without over-explaining it, without discounting it. For those of you that are not entrepreneurs, here's your key takeaway from this experience of mine. What is it that you're afraid to say out loud? And what would it mean about you if you did say it, hold it, and didn't take it back? The third incident this week, also another event relating to a prospect sales conversation, is the intuition already felt that this person was going to be a no. I knew it intuitively, yet I moved forward to have the conversation because it's also a past client of mine and I absolutely adore working with this person. I'm celebrating with this incident is the knowing that already existed. Walking into the conversation, I was unattached, but there was a part of me that had already assumed that this person is resisting this offer, they should be in the container, they should be in this program, and I'm going to help them see it. So there was an ego mind of mine that was deciding for somebody else, right? I want you to pay attention to this because this is what our ego does. In this case, my ego mind decided that this person is resisting my offering and I'm going to show them why it is not prudent to do so, and I'm going to teach them or serve them in a way that will make them see the value that I offer, right? There was a attachment to making something happen in that conversation. So when I walked in emotionally, I was calm in the beginning, but when the prospect shared with me that they are not called, intuitively they're not called to be in this program at this time, I felt a wave of disappointment. I could feel it viscerally. So there was an emotion of disappointment, and there was also a visceral feeling of slumpiness in the body that I felt when I heard that answer. And I also felt that ego mind, the intellectual operating system, was upset. It was like, wait a second, I thought I was going to convince, or I thought this person was resisting because of pricing, blah, blah, blah. So I had to kind of reframe the whole thing to say, you know what, that was your attachment. I had to learn to let go of the attachment to what I thought this person wanted, but instead honor the choice that they're making without any other meaning to it. Not making them wrong, if anything, making them absolutely right, because this is what I teach, honor your intuition. And the difficulty we often have is the distinction between intuition and fear. We often think that, something feels very constricting, so I'm not going to do it. Intuition is never fearful. Intuition is never contracting. That is your instinct. There's a difference between intuition and instinct. Instinct is survival. It is based on survival. It is what helps you make your way through crossing a road when there is ongoing traffic or heavy traffic. That instinct tells you when to duck, when to buckle, when to step away, when to jump. That is your instinct. We often use that instinct in making decisions that are not necessarily required, growth oriented. But because our nervous system doesn't know the difference, because unknown is an unknown, whether it is crossing the street or whether it is jumping into a program, it's an unknown. It's an investment that you may have never made before. It's a choice you've never made before. So how do you distinguish between intuition and instinct? It is knowing that when something is driven by a place of fear and survival, it is instinct. When something is expansive and joyful, it is intuition. Intuition always speaks first, and you later on will have logic follow up and say, no, you don't have the money to do this right now. Why are you bothering to do it? This is logic following up and making sure that you stay in the known area rather than walk into the unknown. So as a result of this, consciousness operating system for me is, it anchored even more from the first incident of directing infinite field energy through my consciousness. It anchored even more that I became very, very clear on who are the type of people I want to attract into this program, what are the kind of transformations that I am already envisioning for them, visualizing for them and manifesting with them, is something that I'm really excited about. So if the person that is saying no, regardless of what their reasons may be, it is simply the infinite field saying they are not ready for this container right now, and that's okay. It's not your job to convince anybody. Your job is to show up, share what it is that you're doing, and people that are wanting to be in this energy, ready for the necessary shifts that they're willing and ready to make, will show up and say yes. It's not for me to micromanage nor convince. My job is to share and see where it lands and allow for the decision to be made by their intuitive self or instinctive self or whatever self that may be. And if I'm guided further by the infinite field to explain, like I am going to for the previous client that I quoted $50,000 to, I'm going to be explaining the psychology behind the choice, but that's about it. That is my job. That's the role I do best, and I continue to do so in service to them. But it's not my job to make them decide nor convince them to make a decision otherwise. So the outer operating system action, actually the most powerful one this week, is I decided to document in detail across 6 different areas of our leadership experience what I want to create using the infinite field. And believe it or not, as a result of this, I ended up creating a whole guide, which is about 44 pages long. I'm actually filling it right now as we speak for every area of the 6 areas, what I want to create, where am I directing the infinite field, what does it look like from an intention standpoint, what does it look like from an imagination standpoint, what does it look like from my identity standpoint, who am I, the I am statements. So I've created a whole guide on this, and this is going to be the first module for those that have said yes to the Epic Leaders Collective program and are coming in already. And the first week's content is ready because I decided to use this tool, create this tool for myself. I'm applying it now, and that becomes the content for my clients. So anybody who's listening to this, if you ever choose to join in, work with me in any of my offerings, right now I only have 2 of them. One is a group offering starting next week, and the other is one-on-one. Please know that everything that I'm sharing and guiding you through is something that I have already applied in my life, tested it, tried it, figured out what works, what doesn't work, and I actually shorten the timeline for you to achieve your outcomes because I know what principles. I'm not talking about tactics, physically what you do or don't do. I'm talking about the internal operating system shifts that are required for you to achieve those external outcomes, whatever they may be. So everything that I'm sharing is something I'm already implementing. I've already done trial and error over the last 11 years of my journey of personal development and spiritual development. I'm bringing it to all of you. So here is another interesting thing I noted in this conversation with this past client of mine for the group program. As I started talking, I realized that my subconscious was already giving answers by saying, they will do this. When I was walking through the contents of the program, I was saying the participants, or they will do this, participants will do this. The word I used was they, meaning I didn't include the prospect as a we. I said they. Here is the other thing I noticed. The same content, when I was reviewing with somebody else last week, automatically I started saying, we will be doing this, we will be doing this. So I noticed that in a moment that in the previous situation where the prospect did say yes to the program and has already paid, with that person, I was talking in we will do this, we will create this, we will, right? And this prospect who I met with, as I was walking through the content of the program, I kept saying they will be doing it, they will be doing it. So my subconscious already knew that this person was a no for this program at this time. What's your takeaway? Your body and your subconscious already knows. It already knows what is a yes, what is a no. And you also have to have the discernment to know whether it is coming from a place of intuition or instinct, which I've already explained to you in detail. Your work is not only to develop your intuition, but also to trust the signal that's already coming through from the place of intuition for you before even result arrives to confirm it. So the question I want to leave you with in this particular incident is this. Where in your life is your language already telling you the truth and you are choosing logic over that language and ignoring it? Here is the last but not the least event of the week, event number 4. Again, a self-realization that happened, which is procrastination, was actually fear of success. So I invested in a business strategy program in January this year, and I have been doing that work over the last 4 to 5 months. And I realized that I was actually stalling one of the key strategies that they have taught to get in front of high value clients. as something that I have been stalling. I've been procrastinating on it. So this Sunday or Monday, I believe, when I woke up in the morning, I had this realization that the only reason I'm not doing what they're asking me to do as a strategy is because I am resisting it. Because on the other side of that strategy, it's a guarantee. If it is a guarantee that I'm going to land my 6-7 figure client, would I still be resisting it? The answer was no. So this became a huge shift in awareness. Emotionally, there was a level of recognition of where I was procrastinating, but beautifully without self-judgment. I saw it, I observed it, didn't fall for it. And physically, in terms of my body, I woke up with a lot of heaviness yesterday, especially Monday. And I resolved and I said, no, I'm not going to let this energy walk into the rest of the day for me. I'm going to change it. I did a deep meditation and I came back out of that meditation feeling completely different. And intellectually, the reframing, the awareness that procrastination is actually the way I'm protecting myself from the success that's on the other side. And so I said, I am not going to allow that to be a hindrance. What I did yesterday through rest of this week, I'm actually putting 2 hours of office work, which is essentially what's office working session. And the group that I'm a part of in the business strategy, I actually put a note out to them saying, I'm going to be doing a 2-hour long immersive working session. So if anybody wants to join for co-working, join in the Zoom link. And yesterday, 2 hours was super productive. Got so much done in that 2 hours yesterday, and I'm continuing that for the rest of this week to keep moving the needle on executing on that strategy without sitting on it because I'm afraid of success that's on the other side. The other aspect from a consciousness operating system is that I have stepped into this embodied identity of someone who is of service to other people by helping them realize where they're acting from intuition versus instinct. That came as an opportunity for me to demonstrate with one of my past clients who has confirmed for the group program, decided to backtrack. And I could see it. So I said, look, the easiest thing I can do right now is to let you sit in this decision and say that's okay. But I care for you enough to know that you first said yes, which means your intuition was full on and you said yes. Then came your fear and logic that is making you backtrack. So I said, let's have a conversation so that we can get you past this fear so that you can actually grow through this process. That is a new thing for me, to realize where I am coming from a place of attachment versus where am I coming from a place of true service to the person in front of me. In terms of outer action, I would say the biggest yes or win for me this week is I do have my first fully paid client confirmed for the group program. I've got one more person that has confirmed. I've got another person who I'm going to be talking to that has confirmed is backtracking, as you're aware now. And I've got 5 more conversations scheduled this week. So those are all in action. I'm celebrating, made a choice for my ad agency. This is another place where intuition was pretty clear on who I wanted to go with. And there was some dissonance in terms of, wait, if I go with this particular agency and if I'm embodying this version of already accomplishing my outcome, would I still be doing so much of the ad related work, or would I be outsourcing it? And those kind of dilemmas showed up, and I kind of cleared them by understanding that the intuition was leading me in the right direction for the right partnership energetically, whereas the work that needs to be done can be outsourced to somebody else as well. So what is your takeaway from this particular event? The deepest form of self-sabotage usually we think is fear of failure. Often it's not. It is the fear of success. We fear our power so much. I talked about how we create and co-create with the infinite field energy, and we are afraid to create because that's a lot of power that has been bestowed on us, and it is something we are so afraid to own. My question to you is this: what is the one area in your life where you already know what to do? You know that if you were to do that one thing, you will produce results, and you're still not fully in. What would it take to identify what that area is for you in your life and decide and do it anyway? These were the 4 key incidents and events in my life and how I navigated them with my own epic leadership operating system and the outer results and outer actions that I've taken. Let me know which one resonated the most for you, which one called you in, which question really made you think deeper this week. I would love to know in comments, and please like, share and subscribe so that your participation, your response makes this video go to larger audience within YouTube and reach more people that are looking for this kind of support and help. This week, I quoted $50,000 and I held that amount with silence. And in that silence, something graduated for me as a person. The prospect has still not said yes, but in my mind, I said never mind. The outer world is only going to give you what you have already decided your worth and your value. The procrastination and the heaviness and I'll start tomorrow, that is laziness disguised. What is it disguising? The fear of you owning your power. Make sure you keep your gaze on what you're creating and not what is in your reality. For your reality right now is a reflection of the past version of you. If you want to create something new, something different, you have to stop focusing on what is and start focusing on what it could be, what is meant to be, what you're creating, what you're here to be. Keep your gaze on what you're creating, and I'll see you next week.